Thank you. And so we proceed to the fourth bill of the day.
International Freedom of Religion or Belief Bill, second reading.
Here.
Fiona Bruce.
Now, I beg to move that this bill be now read a second time. I declare an obvious interest in this bill because I am the Prime Minister's Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion or Belief. But the purpose of the bill is for my successors to ensure that the role and office is on a statutory footing. Why? Well, one reason is because the landmark Truro Review by the Noble Lord Bishop of Winchester, previously Bishop of Truro, recommended that this should happen. Now, the Truro Review was initiated by the then Foreign Secretary, the member for South West Surrey, and I want to thank him for his support for my work and this bill. I also want to thank the current Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, for his support for this bill, and also particularly the Minister of State present in this House today for coming to respond to this debate and for his support for my role. In 2019, the Noble Lord Bishop, then of Truro, was asked to review what more the then Foreign and Commonwealth Office could do to address the persecution of Christians around the world. And the Truro Review made practical recommendations for an enhanced response to the plight of persecuted Christians. Now, I do want to emphasise that those recommendations also covered, as does my envoy role, people persecuted for holding other religions, beliefs, or no religious beliefs at all. And in particular, recommendation 6 was, I quote, recommending to specifically establishing permanently and in perpetuity the role of Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion or Belief with appropriate resources and authority to work across FCO departments. Its recommendation was amongst the other 21 recommendations, all of which were fully accepted by the government, not least because it was this government's manifesto commitment, and remains so, to fully implement the Truro Review. It was endorsed by the Prime Minister just last October, and I'm pleased that it's supported cross-party, indeed by members from every party in this House and across civil society. And can I say, I'm also very pleased to see the honourable member from the opposition benches who will be responding to this debate today, because she has also on many occasions supported the work of the role of Special Envoy. The independent review of the Truro Review, that's an independent review that took place 3 years into the implementation of the Truro Review. That took place in 2022 after the Truro Review was published in 2019. That independent review about progress in implementing the recommendations highlighted with reference to recommendation 6 and stated as follows: it appears to contemplate a permanent Special Envoy position established by law rather than appointed by the Prime Minister. The establishment of such a permanent position has not occurred, and so no substantial action has been taken to date with respect to delivering this aspect of the recommendation. Now, I'm honoured to be the Special Envoy, but I'm very conscious that I do hold this office at the discretion of the Prime Minister of the day. It's been my privilege to serve under 3 Prime Ministers, but there is no guarantee that under any future Prime Minister such an appointment will be made. And this bill is an important measure to solidify the position and work of the Special Envoy, which I'm humbled to say has acquired leading international standing, not just through my work but also the work of my predecessors, Ramesh Ishti and Lord Ahmed, the first envoy, who's also strongly and publicly supported this bill and made that very clear at the launch just 2 weeks ago of the latest Open Doors World Watch List, a gathering of almost 100 members of Parliament from this place. By making the role statutory, this bill would remove any risk of the role of the envoy being at the whim or interest of any future Prime Minister, whatever their political colour.
Will my honourable friend allow me?
I certainly shall.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend, and I think the House should pay tribute to her for her absolutely sterling and dedicated work over many years. And although she's talking about the mechanics of why her job is necessary, I hope she will say a few words before the end of her speech about just what is actually going on in the world and the appalling religiously motivated attacks. I can just take one area of the world, the Benue estate in Nigeria, where in 2023 alone there were 119 separate attacks, 400 people killed, the neighbouring Plateau state 300 people killed. The fact is that the world seems to be ignoring these massacres going on. Black lives matter everywhere. They matter in Nigeria and everywhere, and we should be talking much more about this, but that's not the fault of my honourable friend who's done so much in this field.
The honourable member is absolutely right, and I might come on to talking about how important it is for us to challenge the perception that some have, that this somehow is a niche interest, maybe an interest on behalf of those who have strong religious beliefs. It cannot be a niche interest, because there are hundreds of millions of men, women and children around the world who suffer persecution and discrimination, whether under the hard arm of authoritarian regimes or at the ruthless whim of militant mobs. They need not just our voices but our partnership, not just our words but our actions, not just our goodwill but our good deeds. And this bill will help for the long term to support those actions and those good deeds which we need to take in partnership with others across the world. So today we have an opportunity to deliver on the recommendation number 6 of the Truro Review and the recommendation of the experts who provided the independent review 3 years later of progress on the Truro Review. This bill would provide in law the authority and permanence which is consistent with the significance of the issue internationally of freedom of religion or belief, exactly the point my honourable friend has just made. And if there isn't time for us to speak at length about so many of the atrocities across the world which are being perpetrated even as we speak, then I urge those listening to this debate to read the Hansard of yesterday, just yesterday, when there was a debate on religious persecution and the Open Doors World Watch List 2024 in Westminster Hall. But one of many debates that we host in this House, and I do want to say that I want to pay tribute to parliamentarians from across the parties here, because my work internationally has shown me that we are unique in this country in having such strong cross-party collaboration on this issue. There is no other parliament in the world where there are so many parliamentarians who see this as such an important, critical issue and who actively engage. The fact that there are around 170 members of our all-party group on international freedom of religion or belief, I believe the biggest all-party group in this parliament, is testament to that. So, making this bill would provide in law, as I've said, the authority that's consistent with the importance of this issue and the leading global role which the UK plays, not just through the envoy role, but government ministers as well, and in particular, as I say, the Minister of State present today, who I know is passionate about this. the leading role the UK plays across the world in championing this foundational human right. As we have just recently celebrated the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, drawn up after the atrocities of the Holocaust, and as we approach tomorrow, Holocaust Memorial Day, what more fitting way could there be to demonstrate our commitment to Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights than to pass this bill? Article 18 states, everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience and religion. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom, either alone or in community with others, and in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship and observance. Passing this bill would show that we are long-term serious about advocating for this fundamental human right. Regrettably, too many governments view forum merely as a topic of niche interest, as we've discussed already, to be engaged by a few of us with a particularly religious perspective on life. But FORB is not a niche topic. That perception has to change. We live in an increasingly unstable world, a world where there are increasingly authoritative regimes. And of course, religious belief is an anathema to any authoritative regime which demands undivided loyalty. We can help promote and change today by supporting this bill. Indeed, FORB concerns, freedom of religion or belief concerns, should be core concerns at every international summit, because they are at the core of so many violations of human rights across the world today. FORB is a foundational human right. Let me give you the example of the women in Iran who bravely lead the charge against that brutal regime. Both journalists and politicians alike have not fully grasped the fact that at its heart their protests are about FORB violations. The imposition of religious dress codes is a FORB issue. It is FORB that the Iranian regime fears most, because FORB represents to them an existential threat, with angry crowds shouting, "Women, life, freedom." It is the realisation, the actualisation of freedom of religion or belief for them in full that will ensure not just respect for women there, but for all of their society. And it is on this issue on which the future of Iran hangs. We have become accustomed to countries merely paying lip service to FORB rights obligations, signing up to international agreements such as Article 18, without honouring the obligations within them. It is simply not acceptable for a young girl to be kidnapped from her home, so-called forcibly married by being raped multiple times, and then when she goes to a police station or tries to get justice through the courts, being turned away in a country that has signed up to Article 18, and all of this happening simply because of her religious beliefs. Without freedom to believe or not to believe, it's hard to believe how other human rights can make sense. Freedom of speech, assembly, movement, expression, the right to equality before the law, the right to education, privacy, family life and marriage, all of these and more are predicated on and contingent upon the right to freedom of thought, conscience and religion. Citizens cannot be truly free if they are not able to live according to their beliefs. Without the existence and expression of what has long been considered a sacred inner liberty, those external rights, those other rights I've referred to, lack grounding and legitimacy. Political, social and economic freedoms cannot coexist alongside major limitations on freedom of religion or belief. Freedom of religion or belief can exist without democracy, but it is hard to see how democracy can exist without freedom of religion or belief. And that is why this work and this bill are so important. So why not support this bill? The independent review of the Truro Review pointed out that to do so would be unprecedented, that is, to create the envoy role in statute, as no special envoy position in the UK has thus far been established by law. Yet the argument about precedent is that it takes always one to make one, when there is good reason. And there is good reason here, as I hope I am stating today. The reality is that it is the unprecedented level of persecution across the world, affecting hundreds of millions, right across swathes of religions and beliefs, on account simply of what people believe, that makes this bill so important, and it's that was at the heart of the Truro Review. The noble Lord Bishop of Winchester stated after he embarked on the review 4 years ago that with regard to the abuse of fraud globally, he was, quote, shocked by its scale, scope and severity. The research organisation Pew estimates that 83% of the world live in countries where there are some restrictions on religion or belief. A Christian is killed every 2 hours somewhere in the world simply on account of their belief. Open Doors 2024 World Watch List states an increase again in the number of Christians persecuted, up to 365 million, 1 in 7 across the world. And of course, as I've said, this doesn't just affect Christians, but people of all faiths or beliefs. I'll return if there is time, but I want to give other colleagues who want to speak time too, and I can see that there are a number in the House today, to pressing concerns about violation of form. But if we wanted to look at an example of why the precedent of a special envoy for freedom of religion or belief in this country is so important, we need only look over the Atlantic to be inspired by the United States International Religious Freedom Act, which established permanently the equivalent role of an ambassador at large for religious freedom and an office to support the role some 25 years ago. Now, in my role, I had the privilege over the last 3 years of working very closely, certainly weekly, if not in some cases daily, with the US State Department, both when I was chair of the International Religious Freedom of Religion or Belief Alliance, and a growing alliance of now 42 countries committed to working together on this, and I was chair from the beginning of 2022 until the end of 2023. I'm now honoured to have been elected as vice chair following the end of my term of office. But I've worked with the US State Department, and I've seen how they have capacity, experience and knowledge that has only come as a result of an established office over many years. And I've seen how they work so effectively to support international collaboration on the issue of freedom of religion or belief. Now, just turning us to why we should have this bill, let me, and I will, I'll not go too much further beyond this, because I do sense quite a number of colleagues want to contribute, and I want to leave time for the opposition and the Minister. The director of the Henry Jackson Society, Mark Sidwell, wrote recently, "To build on all that has been achieved, the government should act decisively, follow the recommendation of the Truro report and make championing international religious freedom an official duty of Whitehall embedded in legislation. The law, which brought similar reforms to the US government, the International Religious Freedom Act, is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year and shows the enduring value of such a commitment. As America learnt during the Cold War, the defence of religious freedom abroad is not just a humanitarian priority, but a key component of standing up for the values of the free and democratic world. An increasing body of research shows that the price of religious repression is measured not just in human suffering, vast and appalling as that toll remains, but in the growth of intolerant, dangerous ideologies, as well as economic immiseration. The global decline in religious freedom is both a humanitarian and a strategic crisis. By taking religious freedom more seriously, we can see emerging threats more clearly and understand better how to act against them. And Professor Malcolm Evans, and I will close with this, he was one of the independent reviewers of the Truro Review, and he's a member of the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office Human Rights Advisory Committee, and I do urge the Minister of State to look at convening a meeting of that advisory committee very soon. He attended a parliamentary event in this place on the publication of the report I've just quoted from last October, and he said the following, and he is an expert in this field, a professor who has worked for decades on this subject. He said, I quote, "In particular, the establishment of the office of the Special Envoy has been a real driver of and catalyst for change. What is needed is for that office to have legislative grounding to ensure that it continues, that it has a more clearly defined position, and that its impact continues to grow. This will also mean that the lens of freedom of religion or belief is used when engaging with foreign policy more generally. After all, a duty is a duty, and something that government understands. Making it so will help support the development of detailed, focused and clearly articulated policies and strategies which will complement, take up and lend further substance to what is already now in place. We need to secure the groundwork already in place here in the UK to promote and protect freedom of religion or belief. We need to build on the firm foundation that many here have already laid. We must not risk slipping back. I ask colleagues to support this bill.
Question is that the bill be read a second time. Gavin Robinson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. In the book of St. Matthew, chapter 7, verse 16, it says, "By their fruits you shall know them." And in each case across this House, every one of us represent constituents, but there are some of us that represent much more than just our constituents. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's a pleasure to follow the lady for Congleton, the Honourable Lady for Congleton, who I think embodies that piece of scripture. In all the years that I've been here and the engagements that we have had, I think she embodies it so fundamentally, and that she was appointed in December 2020 as the Prime Minister's Special Envoy on freedom of religious belief was of no surprise to me, knowing her commitment personally and her passion for the issues. But the fact that she brings forward this bill not being about her, but about the continuation of the quest, the campaign, or in this context, the mission field, I think it's very important indeed. And so I'm delighted to rise in support of this bill and in support of the Honourable Lady who's bringing it forward. She is small and quiet, but she is mighty, and she always has been mighty in her endeavours. She brings an assured and engaging zeal to these issues, in the good times and the bad. And she mentioned, rightfully, the watch list that was launched last week in Parliament. And that watch list, I think it captivates members of Parliament each and every year. Some members of Parliament go because they are concerned. All members of Parliament that go leave concerned. Some turn up just because they get scores of cards encouraging them to do so. But if they take the time to go and hear the plight of 371 Christians throughout the world, and the issue is not just about Christians, but 371 million Christians throughout the world, then they leave, I think, emboldened to make sure that we do what we can with our relative luxury to assist those around the world who don't have as fortunate a circumstance. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, I know that having a love of Jesus should not impact on your ability to live freely, or to work within your community, or to talk about your feelings or your faith. But that is what happens to many around the world. And as I said, it's not just about Jesus. There are many in this world who have a faith different from mine, but they suffer similarly. And I say similarly because one of the things that it always occurs to me when I get the chance to attend the Open Doors events and leave annoyed but determined, I always reflect on how many people who live amongst us in this country overuse and abuse the word persecution, and never reflect on what's going on around the world on issues that they have not a clue or an understanding, and nor do I, but I open my heart and open my ears to see it and hear it. So I genuinely think those are important annual events that give us the opportunity not only to engage with like-minded people, but to leave with a sense that in whatever field we work, or in whatever faith field we live, that we have a contribution to make in this space. And that the Prime Minister was able to lift the recommendation from the Bishop of Truro and appoint a special envoy, I think was great. And it has been impacted by a worldwide pandemic. It hasn't probably achieved all that it wished to achieve, but our current incumbent in that role, the Prime Minister's current incumbent in that role, the Honourable Lady for Congleton, is trusting that that role can be put to good purpose for many years to come. And I think there is a very valid and a valiant, purposeful role for the Prime Minister's Special Envoy for our nation to be speaking on these issues. Internationally, we are credited for our role. As she mentioned, my honourable friend, the Honourable Member for Strangford, who chairs the APPG and has done for many years and raises issues from around the world every Thursday in Leaders' Questions in this House, recognise the importance of these issues and the importance of us continually encouraging government to speak and act powerfully in this space. It's no surprise that interest leads to our contributions in aid, for example, and humanitarianism across the world being as powerful as they are. And so we cannot overstate the issue, nor should we underplay the importance of just seeking to lift the proposal and the position and placing it on a statutory footing. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it has my full support, and I want to commend the Honourable Lady for the steps that she takes in her role and the bill that she puts before us today.
Jack Brereton.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's a pleasure to follow my honourable friend for Belfast East. I want to commend my honourable friend, the member for Congleton, on this excellent bill and for her fantastic opening speech. And I can think of no one better in Parliament to bring forward this important bill than my honourable friend, given her outstanding work that she's been doing as the Prime Minister's Special Envoy for freedom of religion or belief. I want to particularly commend my honourable friend for the work she did in July 2022 with the UK hosting the International Ministerial Conference on Freedom of Religion or Belief, and also her work in chairing the International Religious Freedom or Belief Alliance. The freedom of religion or belief should be a fundamental human right, but all too often, and increasingly so around the world today, we are seeing people's freedoms challenged and worrying increases in the persecution of minority groups due to their faith. As my honourable friend said, Open Doors World Watch List illustrates 365 million Christians were subjected to high levels of persecution and discrimination last year, a rise of 25 million more people since 2021. The Pew Research Centre has found that out of 198 countries surveyed, government or societal harassment was present in 155 countries against Christians, 145 against Muslims, and 94 against Jews. In recent months, here in the UK, we've seen a worrying number of incidents of anti-Semitic and Islamophobic hate. I know the government, alongside my honourable friend, have been making huge efforts, both at home and abroad, to tackle these concerning increases in suppression of religious freedoms. The conference that was held in London 2 years ago resulted in 35 countries signing statements on freedom of religion or belief, which I think is a testament to the interest and support around the world for these issues, and the work that we, as the UK, and with my honourable friend's efforts, have led. I know also from the Westminster Hall debate that my honourable friend, the member for Congleton, led in September, of the significant interest across the House and significant work underway in which the UK is taking that leading role internationally, bringing together some of our key partners, our allies, right around the world to highlight the injustices that are going on, to highlight the persecution of those minority groups right around the world, and bringing together some of our allies to take action and to take steps to address some of these concerns. Whilst there is an increasing focus on the issues of freedom of religion or belief, I do think my honourable friend is right to bring forward this important bill. Making her role as Special Envoy for freedom of religion or belief a permanent role in the statute is of major significance. As my honourable friend said, it follows Recommendation 6 of the Bishop of Truro's review, which was for the establishment of a Special Envoy for freedom of religion or belief, which I believe intended for this position to be established in law. And Recommendation 6 of the review outlined specifically that the Foreign Secretary establish suitable instruments, roles, to monitor and implement such an approach, taking into consideration other international approaches, and specifically establish permanently and in perpetuity the role of Special Envoy for freedom of religion or belief, with appropriate resources and authority to work across FCO departments, supported by a Director General-led level champion for freedom of religion or belief. And we've seen that the government's support for this, the Prime Minister and Foreign Secretary have supported the bill's intent. The Conservative Party manifesto committed to the full implementation of the Truro review. Most importantly, and we are seeing, as I say, right around the world, an increasing number of these abuses of these vitally important freedoms right around the world. I think this sends a very, very clear and strong message to those internationally, to those countries where we're seeing these serious abuses, particularly those 13 that were highlighted previously that are of particular concern, that we in the UK stand with all of those groups, all of those minority groups, minority religious individuals who are being persecuted. We stand with them as the UK, and it demonstrates to the world the UK's full support and commitment to stand by those who are being oppressed and having their religious freedoms restricted right around the world. And in terms of the backgrounds of why this bill is important, this is crucial for actually promoting and protecting religious freedoms of belief. And the UK has stated that this is, as I say, a very high priority to be focusing on for the UK government. As had already been set out as well, that this is a key aspect of the UN conventions. In Article 18, it sets out particular importance around this pillar of freedom of religion, freedom of belief, and also freedom of thought, which I think is particularly important. And it is vitally important that the UK, as a leading role in the UN, as a leading role in the UN Security Council, that we take a leading role here at home and abroad in promoting freedoms of religion and belief right around the world, and that we bring to task those countries who oppress minority groups, who take total disregard for some of those freedoms, and make clear that we will continue and that we will always highlight to those countries where we think wrongs need to be addressed. And I think what this does by putting this role into statute, as my honourable friend said, it shows that we are in this for the long term. We are not going to cease in raising these concerns, in highlighting these concerns internationally. We will continue to stand by those religious minorities, those oppressed groups right around the world, and continue to support them. So I fully support this bill, and I wish my honourable friend well with its further passage through this House and the other place.
Opposition front bench, Catherine West.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Member for Congleton for bringing forward the bill today. And I've been in many debates with the Honourable Member, and her dedication and commitment to the cause of freedom of religion or belief, second to none. It's definitely a cause which is dear to her heart and many of us in the chamber. Some might consider, as she said in her speech, for this to be a niche or perhaps even a Conservative-only issue, and I couldn't disagree more. Freedom of religion or belief is a core tenet of fundamental human rights and will always be at the heart of Labour's outlook on the world and the centre of the shaping of our foreign policy. My right honourable friend, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, has previously made this clear and has met with representatives and organisations campaigning on this topic on many occasions. In his role and during these meetings, he's made it clear that Labour will ensure that the UK stands against persecution and oppression in any form and will promote freedom of religion or belief as a key component of our foreign policy. And we know that the Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which has historically not received the same precedence as other human rights, is reflected in Recommendation 6 of the review, which of course the Bishop of Truro carried out in 2019. And we know that this is something which we need to be aware of, perhaps elevating some rights above others. The particular wording, which is relevant to this, freedom of religion or belief, is perhaps the most fundamental human right because so many others depend upon it. In the West, we tend to set one right against another, but in much of the world, this right is not in opposition to others, but rather is the linchpin upon which others depend. And we in the West need to be awake to such dependencies and not dismiss freedom of religion or belief as irrelevant to other rights. If freedom of religion or belief is removed, so many other rights are put in jeopardy too. And I know that the work that the Honourable Member for Congleton and others in the House have done has been very relevant to this reminder from the Bishop of Truro, the then Bishop of Truro, and Labour would like to put on record thanks to him for his assiduous work in this regard and for that seminal report on which basis so much of the work in the years following in Parliament has been based. Now, while undeniable that in many countries, including the UK, religious freedom is something which we take for granted and where people can worship or indeed choose not to worship. And here I would underline the work of the Humanist Society, which does excellent work at educational level to encourage the recognition of people who have no faith, but that their right not to have a faith is also very important. But we know that in vast swathes of the world there is not that level of tolerance. There's a growing trend in recent years of religious minorities increasingly persecuted simply for the beliefs which they hold and cherish so dearly. I know members have often pointed out specific examples, and I've been in debates where the member for Congleton has raised, for example, the treatment of the Uyghur Muslim minority in the Xinjiang region of the People's Republic of China. And I know that in my brief of the Asia and the Pacific area, there are many clear examples which need to be addressed. But we know that the persecution of religious minorities happens in many parts of the world, and I would also like to put on record the work of Lord Ahmed on particular issues in for the Ahmadi community, which we know suffer also disproportionately compared to other minorities. We as the opposition will not stand in the way of this bill today, Mr Deputy Speaker. That said, there are a few considerations which we would like the committee which will look into the furthering of the bill in the House. So we would like to see that how we do balance the other rights which may collide occasionally on this question of a special envoy for freedom of religion or belief. For example, sincere concerns about backsliding in any area around women and girls in any part of the world, with particular reference to their reproductive rights. Similarly, the message it may send to the global LGBT+ community, and it will be important for the committee to balance all of those elements in any future examination of the bill. While freedom of religion or belief does not necessarily conflict with either of these issues, there are concerns which will be raised, and it would be wrong to give the impression of putting rights in a hierarchy. On a technical level, I also have reservations that the appointment of a special envoy on a statutory basis removes and weakens the flexibility and responsiveness of the government to appoint special envoys as and when required to deal with the ever-changing global situation. And we've seen that that's been demonstrated in recent weeks with the new appointment of a representative for humanitarian affairs in the occupied Palestinian territories, a move called for and subsequently welcomed by the Labour Party. I see the Minister is in his place and, of course, carried that out. And these are the sorts of flexibilities which we know that the Prime Minister of the day will have at their disposal. It's very fitting that today we're having this debate on the Friday before Holocaust Memorial Day, which in my constituency will be celebrated on Sunday, and also bearing in mind the important work of the Community Safety Trust, which the Honourable Member for Stoke mentioned, and also, of course, Tell Mama and the other organisations which deal with Islamophobia. It is so important that we do not allow any of these matters to divide our communities here at home. Mr Deputy Speaker, I know the House will continue debating and scrutinising the situation facing freedom of religion or belief on many occasions going forward, and I would welcome both the Minister's and the Honourable Member's comments on the issues raised.
Minister of State, Andrew Mitchell.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I want to start by thanking the Prime Minister's Special Envoy for freedom of religion or belief, my honourable friend for Congleton, for introducing this private member's bill on international freedom and religion and belief. I would also like to take this moment to express my gratitude to my honourable friend for her tireless devotion to promoting and protecting FORB for everybody. And my thanks must also go to her Deputy David Burrows for his commitment to this important work. As you know, Mr Deputy Speaker, freedom of religion or belief remains a human rights priority for the British Government. The work of the Special Envoy, especially through International Religious Freedom or Belief Alliance, together with the efforts across the Foreign Office network, are making a difference around the world. And the bill before us today seeks to further cement Britain's commitment to FORB by making statutory the role of the Special Envoy. The bill states that a Special Envoy's duties will be to work to promote and protect international freedom of religion or belief. Secondly, to raise awareness of cases of concern and advocate for those who are discriminated or persecuted on the basis of their religion or belief. And work, thirdly, with representatives of other governments, including other special envoys, to promote freedom of religion or belief globally. And that has very much been the sense of the House in the excellent speeches which we have heard today. The bill covers the reporting requirements for the Special Envoy and how the terms and conditions of the role should be determined. Additionally, the bill would establish an office of the Special Envoy. The principal duty of this office would be to support the work of the Special Envoy. Such an office must provide the Special Envoy with staff, accommodation, equipment and other facilities as considered necessary for carrying out the role. The Government's commitment to the role of Special Envoy is clear. Indeed, we have had 3 Special Envoys to date. And I should also be clear that this bill does not establish a precedent for other similar roles. Uniquely, legislating for this post follows an independent report, recommendation and a most important manifesto commitment. And today, Mr Deputy Speaker, the Government delivers on that commitment in our manifesto. Especially important given the internationally recognised leadership that my honourable friend has provided so far. The bill underlines our commitment to FORB and importantly supports implementation of Recommendation 6 of the Bishop of Truro's 2019 review into the work of the FCDO on FORB. The Bishop of Truro's report recommended that the role of Special Envoy for this be established in permanency and perpetuity. Implementation of the Bishop of Truro's recommendations was, as I have said, a manifesto commitment, and we thank the noble Lord Bishop very much indeed for his work. There will, of course, be opportunities during the passage of this bill to consider any possible amendments to improve the bill, and the honourable lady who speaks for the opposition set that out. And I and my officials will work with my honourable friend for Congleton in this regard. But the government wishes to support the passage of this bill today. The current Special Envoy's terms of reference outline that she will work with the Minister for Human Rights, my noble friend Lord Ahmed, and through the Foreign Secretary to the Prime Minister. The Envoy is asked to report twice yearly to the Prime Minister on progress, in addition to providing ad hoc reports on important issues arising or following overseas visits as Special Envoy. This is in line with what the bill proposes. I wish to take this opportunity to congratulate my honourable friend on her International Religious Freedom of Belief Alliance work, accomplishments as chair of IFRBA, having been asked to carry out this role for a second year last year, the first time such a request has been made in the organisation's history. Most notably, the expansion of IRFBA's membership, with now 42 nations coming together to highlight violations and abuses of FORB and advocate for those who are being persecuted. The IRFBA issued joint statements and campaigns that she has initiated underline the impact we can have when we speak with one voice. The statements on countering anti-Semitism and the persecution of Christians were widely supported, with 16 countries supporting the statement of anti-Semitism and 22 countries supporting the statement on the persecution of Christians. These statements highlight the ongoing concerns to the international community and set out how to address and tackle these issues. The monthly advocacy my honourable friend has initiated of highlighting individual cases of religious prisoners of conscience is another important and valuable piece of work the Alliance has initiated under my honourable friend's chairmanship. I was delighted to learn that of the cases that she has publicly supported in 2022, 2 were released last year. Hannah Abdimalik, a Christian in Somaliland, and Shamil Kakimov, a Jehovah's Witness in Tajikistan. I would also like to congratulate my honourable friend on her efforts on planning and implementing a virtual Global Youth Summit in October last year. It is an achievement that my honourable friend brought together 510 participants from 77 countries to fulfil a key priority following the Interministerial Conference on FORB in London in 2022, which set out the need to inspire a new generation of FORB advocates. At that FORB conference, we brought together over 800 faith and belief leaders, human rights actors, and 100 government delegations to agree action to promote and protect FORB. My noble friend Lord Ahmed announced a new UK funding to support FORB defenders, including those persecuted because of their activism, as well as funding and expertise for countries prepared to make legislative changes to protect FORB. As a result of the conference, 47 governments, international organisations and other entities made pledges to take action in support of FORB. Since the conference, we have built on the momentum in a number of ways. My honourable friend for Congleton has also continued to raise awareness of restrictions on the right to FORB across the world. My honourable friend does this in many ways, including through calling debates on the floor of the House, as she did yesterday, in convening a debate on Open Doors' World Watch List report. My honourable friend has brought civil society experts together with Foreign Office officials in a series of country-specific roundtables, including, but not limited to, Iraq, Myanmar, Nigeria, Ukraine and Pakistan. These debates and roundtables are vital to ensuring these issues can be addressed and resolved. The British High Commission in Islamabad, for example, is engaging with senior government officials and civil society on the need to ensure the safety of Christian community at this troubling time, and we want to see this work continued in every possible way. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, all of this demonstrates how committed this government is to freedom of religion and belief, and how we continue to work closely with my honourable friend for Congleton in all the brilliant work that she does. So, in conclusion, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I again reiterate this government's support for the role of Special Envoy for FORB and for this bill, and congratulate my honourable friend for her commitment and perseverance in bringing this bill forward.
With the leave of the House, Fiona Bruce.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I will be very brief. I want to thank all colleagues across the House for their support for this bill and their kind remarks, and in particular, once again, to the Minister of State for giving up his time to come to the House personally to confirm the government's support. I also want to thank the Prime Minister for his personal and active support for my role. I'd like to repeat the thanks which the Minister of State has relayed to David Burrows, the Prime Minister's Deputy Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion or Belief, who works alongside me daily in this role, and without whom I couldn't do it. In fact, I said that to him when I was approached to take up the role, and he said, "You take it up and I will help you," and he has. This wouldn't be being brought forward today but for David's sterling work in this field. I'd like to thank Lord Alton of Liverpool in the other place for his work over many years on this issue. It was Lord Alton who first took me to a meeting of Aid to the Church in Need when I heard firsthand of the atrocities that were being perpetrated against people across the world simply on account of their beliefs. And I want to finally thank Mervyn Thomas, who's the founder-president of CSW. He founded CSW 43 years ago and has worked on this issue ever since. And he approached me within a few days of my being entering this House as a Member of Parliament and asked if he could discuss this issue with me. And Mervyn, I want to pay tribute to him for all that he has done over all those years. It is so encouraging to hear him say that there has never been a greater point at which those in the world concerned about abuses of freedom of religion or belief have not been working more collaboratively together. And that is much needed, because there's never been a time in the world when those abuses have been so great. So this bill and its safe passage will make an important step to the UK's work, to strengthening the UK's work in collaboration with others for a future in which freedom of religion or belief is honoured and stronger.
Question is that the bill be now read a second time. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Access to Telecommunications Networks Bill, second reading.